Hello, my name is Angela. I'm 31 years old and have been employed for the past 5 years. Recently, I accepted a marriage proposal from my boyfriend of 3 years, and now we are busy planning our wedding and honeymoon. We met at work. He was a senior colleague who always lent a hand when I faced challenging tasks. Unlike my quiet college days, which saw the end of my first relationship due to my unassuming nature, my life took a surprising turn when I joined the workforce. My husband, 4 years my senior, seemed reliable and sincere. Our romance began with an unforgettable date at an aquarium, where we bought a dolphin figurine that I still hold dear. He was clear about his intentions for a future together, which filled me with immense joy. After his heartfelt proposal at the same aquarium, I was ecstatic, hardly able to sleep from excitement. However, the dreamy haze lifted somewhat when we visited his parents' home shortly after our engagement. While my father-in-law was welcoming, my mother-in-law was less than impressed, openly criticizing me during our first meeting. Her harsh words planted seeds of doubt and anxiety about what my married life would hold. This recent incident has only added to my concerns, revealing deeper issues that perhaps I had chosen to ignore until now. I tried to reassure myself that feeling nervous before the wedding was perfectly normal. Despite my reservations, I continued with the wedding preparations, pretending everything was okay. During one of our conversations about life after marriage, it came up that both my husband and his mother expected me to quit my job. Although I once liked the idea of not working after marriage, at that moment it didn't feel right. My job was my haven, and with all the uncertainty surrounding my upcoming marriage, I wasn't ready to leave it behind. Despite my mother-in-law's repeated suggestions that I should quit, I decided to keep working at the same company as my husband. As we planned our wedding, we faced disagreements, especially about when to register our marriage. My husband wanted to do it sooner rather than later, and eventually I agreed to go along with his timeline. The registration process itself felt routine, but the realization that we were officially married brought me a deep sense of joy. We initially planned for a small, intimate wedding. However, after my husband mentioned this to his mother, she intervened dramatically. She phoned us the next day, exclaiming, "A small wedding? Gregory deserves something grand, and I will ensure it is just that. And keep your guest list short, just your parents and close friends. I assume your friends are quite dull. They just dampen the mood." Her words were blunt and imposing. She quickly took over the planning, dictating everything from the venue to the guest list. It was overwhelming how she assumed she could control so much. Reluctantly, I agreed to limit my guest list to just my family and close friends, as she insisted. Yet her interference didn't stop there. She had opinions on every detail: the program, entertainment, decorations, and even the menu. Following her elaborate plans would push our budget significantly over what was initially agreed upon. Initially, Gregory's family had promised to cover half of the wedding cost, but suddenly they retracted, leaving me to fund the excess caused by her lavish ideas. Trying to control costs secretly, I made some budget-friendly choices, but she criticized them too, accusing me of making the wedding look cheap because I didn't follow her instructions. After the wedding, I hoped for some space from her dominating presence, but my husband had other plans against my wishes, and unbeknownst to me, Gregory decided we should live with his mother. The new apartment we had leased was canceled, and all my personal belongings were redirected to his family's home. I was stunned. Every decision about our new life together had been made without my input. Handling the wedding arrangements had already been challenging enough, but this new development left me feeling completely sidelined in my marriage. Even when I expressed concerns to Gregory about the escalating costs exceeding our budget, he dismissed me. My anxiety, which had been a constant companion since before the wedding, only grew stronger afterward. We had planned a dream honeymoon abroad, a destination I had always yearned to visit. The thought of going there for our honeymoon felt like a fairy tale. However, my excitement was being overshadowed by Gregory's odd behavior and the looming reality of living with my mother-in-law. Upon our return, despite the significance of the trip, Gregory had been strangely uncooperative during the planning phase. Oddly enough, he took it upon himself to handle the bookings for flights and hotels. I assumed he was arranging a romantic getaway for us and felt a mix of gratitude and relief that he was contributing, even in a small way. Little did I know this was a harbinger of a shocking revelation. The wedding chaos subsided, and our honeymoon was upon us. Amid my mixed feelings about recent events and our future living arrangements, I was determined to make the best of our trip. Yet, as I was up in the middle of the night preparing for our early flight, Gregory casually dropped a bombshell. "Angela, I'm going on this trip with my mom," he declared as I was double-checking our luggage. I was stunned, unable to comprehend his words. "What are you talking about? It's our honeymoon, not just any trip. Why would your mother join us? We've only paid for 2 tickets, and everything's booked just for us," I protested. His next words left me reeling. "I never said I was going on this trip with you. Don't be ridiculous. I'm going with my mom. It's a gratitude trip for everything she's done for me. You stay here and get the house ready. Clean every nook and cranny." Before I could respond, he forcibly tore my passport, the one I had entrusted to him. Shocked, I stood speechless as he destroyed my passport right before my eyes. Just then, my fully made-up mother-in-law barged into our room without knocking. "Gregory, are you ready?" she chirped. His face lit up with excitement. "Yeah, we're good to go. Finally, we can enjoy this trip without any interruptions," he replied. They both shared a gleeful laugh, leaving me utterly dismayed. I realized then that I was on the brink of marrying into what felt like an absolute nightmare. While I had been contemplating how to manage living with my mother-in-law, this situation was beyond anything I could have imagined. "I see now the kind of people you two are," I managed to say, though my words seemed to have little effect as they laughed heartily and left together. I had been pleased that Gregory was helping with the honeymoon plans, but it turned out he was orchestrating the entire trip for his mother, booking everything under her name from the start, and leaving me to bear all the expenses. The betrayal from my husband was a profound blow, and my anger overshadowed any sadness I felt. The dreamy, intimate wedding and the perfect honeymoon I had envisioned as the best memories with the one I loved were both ruined by the selfish actions of my mother-in-law and my husband. Overwhelmed by the gravity of what was happening, I struggled to accept this harsh reality. Shortly after the fiasco with Gregory and his mother, I realized I had to make a swift and decisive move. I needed to get a divorce. Interestingly, I had been recording audio since the beginning of our wedding preparations, initially with the intent to capture the joy and significance of our wedding and honeymoon. However, what started as a sentimental project to preserve memories soon morphed into a crucial record of my mother-in-law's hurtful actions and harassment. At first, I doubted the utility of these recordings, assuming I'd never want to revisit them. But in an ironic twist, they became invaluable evidence for my impending divorce. In the days following the disaster, while I was supposedly settling into our shared home, I found myself packing to leave. I had barely unpacked, so it was quick work to get everything ready to go. As I prepared to leave, nagging anger about Gregory and his mother going on our honeymoon without me loomed in my mind, but I forced myself to focus on my next steps. I cleaned the house one last time to remove any trace of my brief stay. While doing so, I stumbled upon shocking evidence in the living room. I discovered documents showing that Gregory had been embezzling money from his company. He was in charge of sales and had been underreporting earnings, pocketing the difference. Shockingly, his mother was complicit, having kept meticulous notes of the actual sales, the amounts embezzled, and even a list of luxury items Gregory had purchased for her with the stolen money. The diary detailing their scheme was left carelessly in plain view. Stunned by the extent of their deceit, I quickly realized the gravity of the situation. Initially, I considered whether my position at the same company might allow me to smooth things over quietly, but I quickly dismissed that thought. Why should I protect someone who had so callously discarded me for a trip with his mother? Armed with the evidence of his embezzlement, I went straight to the company. Although Gregory and his mother were supposed to be on their honeymoon, my sudden appearance at work instead of on a tropical island caused a stir among my colleagues and superiors. Upon seeing me, questions flew. Weren't you supposed to be on your honeymoon? No longer seeing any reason to conceal the truth, I explained that Gregory and his mother had gone on the honeymoon instead, leaving me behind after destroying my passport and saddling me with the entire cost of the trip. The shock and outrage from my coworkers were palpable. Thankfully, I had a unique ally in the company, my uncle, one of the top executives. I had always kept our relationship a secret to avoid any suspicions that I had landed my job through nepotism. I had earned my position on merit alone, and he had agreed to keep our familial connection confidential. Since childhood, my uncle had shown me great affection, treating me almost like his own child. We shared many cherished memories, including trips just with him during my early years, where I'd often cheekily persuaded him to buy me treats, much to my parents' chagrin. With the evidence of Gregory's wrongdoing in hand and the support of my uncle, I felt empowered to address the situation head-on. I approached my uncle with the evidence, and he was as shocked as he was supportive. It was a difficult moment, revealing the extent of the betrayal I had experienced, but it was also the first step towards reclaiming my independence and integrity after a profoundly unsettling chapter of my life. We hadn't met since the fiasco began. When I knocked on my uncle's office door, after explaining the situation to his secretary, I was allowed inside. My uncle, initially greeting me with a warm smile, sensed something was wrong as his expression quickly turned serious. "Weren't you supposed to be on your honeymoon?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Seeing my uncle's familiar and kind face, I was overwhelmed with emotion and burst into tears. Through my sobs, I recounted the entire ordeal, detailing Gregory's betrayal and how he and his mother had gone on what was supposed to be our asterisk honeymoon. I also disclosed the shocking discovery of Gregory's embezzlement. My uncle's expression shifted from concern to anger, a side of him I had never seen. He listened intently, his brow furrowed, and immediately pledged to convene a board meeting to address the situation. After handing over the evidence, he asked me about my plans for the day. I told him I was heading back home, but he insisted, "Let's grab some good food first. I'll drop you off at home afterward." Despite the incredible betrayal I'd experienced, I felt genuinely comforted knowing I had supportive, caring people like my uncle in my life. 2 weeks later, when my husband and his mother returned from the trip, I received an irate call from him. He was furious that I hadn't picked them up from the airport or cleaned the house as he had demanded. He ranted about my absence, but I cut him off. Armed with a top-notch divorce lawyer, recommended by my uncle and my parents, I was already deep into the divorce proceedings. "You two are loud and annoying. I don't want to hear your voice anymore. Why would I pick up someone I'm going to divorce, and why would I follow your silly orders to clean?" I said sharply. Gregory was taken aback, momentarily speech, but soon resumed his tirade. Do you think it's okay for you to say such things? I did you a favor by marrying you. If I divorce you, you'll never get remarried. My mom's furious too. If you come back now and prepare our meals, I might forgive you. We're tired of foreign food. Make some tasty traditional meals, he demanded. His words were harsher than ever before. His true colors had shown, and it dawned on me that I had never truly seen him for who he was. After revealing his scheme with the passport and opting to go on a trip with his mother, everything about him was painfully clear. I've consulted a lawyer about our divorce. You should discuss any further matters with them, I informed him coolly. A lawyer? What are you talking about? I'm not getting a divorce, he retorted, confusion and panic in his voice. I could hear his mother in the background demanding the phone and hurling insults my way. Do what you please. By the way, I've informed the company about your embezzlement. They'll be calling you in soon. Maybe you should get a lawyer too, I replied, sensing his growing panic. It was no longer my problem. He kept calling, but I simply blocked his number. My uncle, well aware of our supposed honeymoon dates, had already acted. The company had summoned my husband based on the evidence I provided. They verified everything and confirmed the discrepancies in front of the company's executive. My husband desperately tried to fabricate a story, accusing me of being the real embezzler and claiming he had tried to stop me. At that point, my uncle couldn't hold back his anger and shouted, "My niece would never do such a thing. We've confirmed that you and your mother committed the embezzlement. You're lucky we haven't involved the police yet." Realizing the jig was up and that I was related to senior management, my husband looked defeated, as if he had lost everything. That day, I went to the company to return the wedding gifts to my colleagues, as our marriage had ended so abruptly. Everyone refused to take them back, insisting they had given them as a token of their blessings, further showing their support and kindness during such a tumultuous time in my life. As I was enveloped in the supportive warmth of my colleagues, my estranged husband approached me in desperation. "Why didn't you tell me you were related to the top brass?" "I'm sorry. Can we start over? Can you ask your uncle to keep me in the company and make the embezzlement go away?" he pleaded. Disgusted by his audacity, I shot back, "Do you even understand the gravity of what you're saying? Are you okay in the head? Divorce is the only option now. Reflect on your actions and face the consequences." After firmly pushing him away, it was clear he had nowhere else to turn. Clinging on desperately, he was a pitiful sight. My colleagues, witnessing this, called security, who promptly escorted him out. He was terminated immediately, and the company began seeking damages for the embezzlement. Amidst this turmoil, my mother-in-law attempted to contact my family repeatedly. However, once she spoke with my level-headed father-in-law, those calls ceased. I had always wondered why he had allowed our honeymoon plans to proceed, but later understood his perspective. He apologized, explaining he had been misled to believe my mother-in-law was going on a domestic trip with friends. He had been looking forward to some peace away from her nagging about shopping and dining out. Following the debacle, my father-in-law supported my decision to return to my parents' home and even helped me pack. Our emotions were high, and without much discussion, I left. Knowing my father-in-law's genuine, kind, and rational nature, I realized he would have intervened had he known the true intentions behind the trip. He was the only person from that household whom I could trust. Although I was the victim, the idea that my honeymoon had been hijacked by my mother-in-law was deeply embarrassing. I considered resigning from my job, and my parents suggested taking some time off. However, my uncle, seeing the potential for work to serve as a distraction, spoke with the CEO. They agreed to transfer me to a branch office, allowing me some space to heal and focus. The divorce proceedings with my husband progressed smoother than expected, thanks to an excellent lawyer. During this process, I learned more about the financial dynamics of my in-laws' family. It turned out that they were an average working-class family with minimal savings, exacerbated by my mother-in-law's wasteful spending habits. My father-in-law, understanding the gravity of the situation, ended up selling a family home to cover the substantial alimony, influenced by the short duration of our marriage. When I returned to the family home with my luggage on what was supposed to be our honeymoon departure day, neighborhood gossip began to swirl. The story of our failed marriage and subsequent scandal spread quickly, exaggerated by local rumors, making it unbearable to stay in the area. My mother-in-law, always concerned about appearances, and having initially approved of our marriage due to the status it brought, found it increasingly difficult to face the community. Likely overwhelmed by embarrassment and the financial strain, my father-in-law felt compelled to take responsibility for the financial damages caused by my husband's actions. Despite my deep disdain for my husband and mother-in-law, I can't help but feel a profound sympathy for my father-in-law. After the upheaval, my husband being fired, ordered to pay damages, and my decision not to return, my husband spiraled into a mental breakdown. Now unable to work, he spends his days listlessly in a modest apartment he moved into. Witnessing her son in such a state has caused my mother-in-law to become withdrawn and reclusive. During a candid conversation, my father-in-law expressed his exhaustion with my mother-in-law's behavior and revealed that he was considering a divorce. He no longer wanted to spend his remaining years in discontent and asked if I could connect him with the lawyer I had used. I immediately reached out to my uncle, who facilitated contact with the lawyer. It might take a while, but I am hopeful that my father-in-law will be able to start anew and live a happier life. Thanks to the intervention of the company's CEO and my uncle, I was transferred to a branch office. This change has been a blessing, as I'm now surrounded by colleagues and superiors who are incredibly supportive. I am eternally grateful for my uncle's assistance throughout these trying times. The only regret I carry with me is missing out on the country we had planned to visit for our honeymoon. Once everything settles down, I hope to make that trip abroad, fulfilling the dream that was originally meant to be shared, but now is a celebration of new beginnings and personal freedom.